I'm Hunter Wade at the Athletes Lounge podcast. I'm here with my guest, Coach Carrie Daniels of Scottsburg girls basketball. How you doing, Coach?
I'm great, thank you.
So just jumping right into it, we're filming this in the afternoon of the 16th, and you're 2-1 right now with a game, later today. How are you feeling so far about the season?
I feel like we've played so far, some pretty good basketball. Obviously, you don't want your team to, be clicking on all cylinders at this point. And we've talked about just each game and each day getting better as the season goes. But I think the biggest thing is we don't have a lot of depth, but the girls play really, really hard. And that in itself can create a whole lot on the basketball floor.
So just kind of getting some people some background. Now you played and coached at Austin Peay. You've played and coached collegiately. What's the difference between coaching college girls and high school girls?
I think that well, a couple things. Obviously, in coaching college, you're out recruiting the players that you want to bring in to make up and the chemistry of your team. Whereas in high school, you get what you get. Those that are in your school. And also with high school, you have some kids that have goals of playing at the next level and they want to do that, but you also have kids that it's more of a social thing. They want to be a part of it and whatever that is. Whereas at college, it's a passion. They love it. They want to compete and continue to move forward with their basketball careers. I also feel like at the collegiate level, obviously I think there's more. I mean, obviously you strategize in high school, but at the collegiate level, you're just able to do more with those players because they are so in tune to the game of basketball and can pick up things a lot quicker. I think what I have found in my stints in high school is, I just gotta really kind of simplify a lot.
No, I You kind of led me into my next question a little bit. I've talked to coaches around the whole state who have had trouble getting their girls to watch basketball, just to kind of learn basketball. Has that been
Yeah.
a struggle for you, especially dropping down to high school where, they're not as inclined to watch it as college athletes are?
Yeah, I definitely think that you don't see as much of that, whether, the world we live in today, where they're, on their phones nonstop on social media. I do think that, comes into account with that. And you don't have, you have so many of the high school kids that, again, are just doing it to be a part of the team. There are a handful of them that will watch the basketball. I'm always coming into practices, once basketball. It is my favorite time of year because you can catch a game on so many different channels and I'll come in and I'll be like, did anybody watch this game? And, I'll have a point to make about it. And there might be a few that'll raise their hands. And I mean, it is kind of disappointing because I've learned so much just from watching, different teams and pulled so much from that. And as a player, I had a red shirt year when I played in college, and it was during that year that I decided I wanted to be a coach. And you just dissect the game so much differently from watching it versus being out on the court and playing it.
You took my next question. I was about to ask, when did you knew you wanted to become a coach? Well, you headed me off there, but I guess asking that when when you're in college, you've pretty much been around the game now constantly from college to now,
Mhm.
without stopping pretty much.
Right.
So you kind of seen the evolution of, I guess, the game the last, a little bit and the evolution of, I guess, just the girls, like the students. Has there been any big evolution in your mind from like the kids from when you first started coaching and when you were playing to now? I know college to high school age, but they're still,
Right. I think that, back when I got into it, I think cell phones were really just coming out and becoming a thing. And so, the kids didn't have the cell phones and you didn't have to worry about social media. They had more time to focus on their education and the basketball and the things that needed to be done. Whereas now there's just so many other distractions. And the way social media can reach out and affect people positively or negatively, has just really taken over and changed things so much. And I also think so much has changed with COVID. when we went through that spell. I think we're still trying to recover and get back from that. And then now when you look at the collegiate side of it, the NILs, everything that the transfer portals, like it's completely changed how kids are recruited, especially high school athletes. And just the schools and looking at financial situations because of the NILs with different sponsors and things that they've had long term. So there's been a lot that has changed, honestly, from day one since I got in.
I guess kind of because you kind of brought up, what was your recruiting process like? What kind of options did you have? What type of, what went into you choosing what you chose?
It's so funny you ask it. I was actually just talking to a couple of the football coaches this morning. We got into a subject about college and recruiting and things. And when I was very, very fortunate in my high school career, that I played with a lot of unbelievable players that were so talented and that went on to do, really great things at Division I schools. And I had a 6'3" center that was in my grade 2 that I played with. And we were both being recruited by quite a few different schools. Back then I did a home visit with Louisville and, had some bigger schools. I was also being recruited for track, but I knew kind of basketball was the avenue I wanted to take. And there's, Austin Peay contacts our coach at the time and had gotten film from actually our game against New Albany. And myself and my teammate, our center, she noticed us in the film and wanted to come and kind of talk to us. And that's kind of how it all started. And then me and my teammate were like, hey, this would be kind of cool, to go play together. I was a little, 1-2 guard. She was a center. I knew if I ever, penetrated, got in trouble, just throw it up. She's going to go get it and give me an assist. So we really liked the idea of that. She ended up going to junior college out of high school, and I ended up down at Austin Peay. And that in itself was a journey of so many different things. But I think I had a great experience with recruiting. Recruiting has changed a whole lot from day one, back when I was there to now. But at the same time, I think in the end, ended up wanting to play with a teammate and really wanted to go somewhere and make a difference and not kind of sit the bench for a couple years and then maybe get some time my junior or senior year, which is probably what would have happened had I picked, some of the other schools, but was able to be a part of something really special.
You were part of the team that went to their first NCAA tournament, weren't you?
I was. And, I told the story this morning to the coaches that, in high school, I mentioned playing with the talent that we had at Scottsburg. And, I don't know the exact number. We were like, I don't know, 96-8 or something like that my whole 4 years. And I go to college in my first year, I think we won 4 games. And I didn't know how to handle it. I'm like, what in the heck? I'd never been a part of a losing team. So that was really a struggle. And, then we got to my sophomore year. It was a little bit better, but I started questioning, did I make the right decision? My teammate didn't end up going there. And I was homesick and I had to talk with my coach. And finally I was like, you know what? I made a commitment. I've got to see this thing out. Every year, then the coach got, every year got more talent in. We continued to improve until my senior year. We won the OVC championship and went to the NCAA tournament. So I'm glad I stuck it out because I think it taught me so much. And, I had to battle so much adversity that I wasn't used to, that I still pull from today with that experience.
What was it like to go to the tournament and, play, not sure, correct. Well, go to the tournament. What was it like to win the conference tournament?
It was amazing, just to know that there was a core group of us that had been there and struggled those first few years, and just having to pour everything into turning the program around and getting it to the top of the conference. It was just an amazing feeling and so satisfactory, I guess, knowing that we didn't walk in and just win from day one. We had to really work hard and put everything into it and, to build it up to where it was.
You also coached your alma mater in the NCAA tournament. What was
Yeah.
that? What was that like to not only just coach in the tournament, but do it with your school and a school that you had? What, you were there 5 years as a student, right? 4 or 5.
I, yes, I had a medical redshirt year and then, yeah, so I was there 5 years as a player.
So what was it like to go back to the campus and lead them to the tournament again?
It was really just kind of an unreal feeling. We weren't the favorite either of those seasons going into the conference tournament. But I'll never forget, we had players that bought in, and just when the time came, they laid it on the line and gave everything that they had. And watching, it was amazing as a player. And I'll never forget that feeling and being able to win a, conference championship, go play in the NCAA tournament. But being a coach and watching your own players achieve and make plays and, win the championship and cut nets down and celebrate. It, I don't know, to me, it was just so much more special watching them do it versus doing it myself.
The when you're back at Scottsburg now, you're from Scottsburg. What led you back to Scottsburg from, 'cause you've been at a few different colleges and a few different roles. What got you back to Scottsburg when you were in Las Vegas at one point?
Yeah. So I had not lived in Scottsburg since I graduated high school. When I graduated, I went away to Austin Peay to play, and then immediately out of college got into Division I coaching. And it had been, gosh, 24 years that I had been away. 24, well, actually more than that if you count the 5 years that I played. So almost 30 years. And my mom and dad had both been ill. My mom had been diagnosed with cancer in 2018. My dad struggled with COPD. And it was just the right time. The job came open and I, got a call, and knowing that I have 4 sisters, 3 of who live here in Scottsburg as well. And I just felt like, after speaking with my family, my husband and my son, it was tough because it was my son was going into his senior year, and it was all during COVID. And I felt so guilty by pulling him from his friends and his school that he had been at in his senior year, one of the most critical years. But at the same time, I knew that my family needed me. So I moved back, and actually we bought my dad's house and renovated it, and he lived with us. And then late last year, actually around last Christmas, mom passed away in May of 2022. So I was just so thankful to have that time with her that I wouldn't have been able to have. And then dad, that later that year, Christmas of last year, was diagnosed with cancer as well. And he ended up passing away this past January. So I'm just so thankful that this came open and I was able to come back and be with my family. And that's what brought me back. I've always thought about coming back and coaching at my alma mater, and I don't want to downplay at all this job and this position that I have, because I'm thankful for it and I will pour my heart and soul into it. But a big reason, I mean, I have to be honest, was definitely my family.
So has there ever been an itch to try to get back into college coaching since then?
I don't think I would ever say never. I've had a couple of phone calls and had a couple of situations. Actually, this past summer had an offer to go into a Division I program. It just would have to be, if I ever left, it wouldn't just be any Division I job offer to, for me to jump and go do it. It would have to be after being in it for so long and then seeing the changes and how it is now. It would have to be the right situation with the right people to make me get back into it. There are things that I miss about it, but also there's so many pros as well, just being a high school coach and what I get to deal with every day with these young ladies.
So what's been the, kind of going back to your current, post, is it what's been the biggest, I guess, thing for you what you've been working on in your time at Scottsburg? What's the thing you've been trying to, I guess, I don't know, renovate, master? What are you trying to get your team to do the most?
Well, and I want this to come across the wrong way because, I mean, obviously this is my alma mater. This is where I
Yeah,
played. And I think this comment kind of goes back to how when we talked about how so much has changed. So coming back here, it was so different. It was so different from what I remembered and what I experienced. And I think the big thing that I've been trying to work on and is a culture change. And again, I don't mean that in a bad way because, I respect this program and the history and the tradition of the program, but just kind of the mindset of the kids and their approach and the mentality. And that's just something that I've really focused on. And, there's probably not a day that goes by that I somehow don't mention that or try to get a point across that has to do with that.
we kind of talked about the difference between coaching high school and college girls earlier, but what's the difference? Okay, when you're a college coach, you kind of have full control of everything. What's the
Mhm.
difference like going from when you're a college coach and the girls are there in your program to being a high school coach where the girls are, they have like 2,000 hobbies mixed in with basketball.
It is a lot different, and it was definitely a transition because you've got kids when you're coaching college, you're paying for their school,
Yeah.
and they're going to be where you tell them to be when you tell them to be there. They're going to do what you ask them to do. And in high school it's different. Kids have different goals, and as you said, so many different hobbies and things that they're involved in, and so many things that pull them in different directions, and so many distractions that they're just not able to get away from like you would say if you were in a college setting. So it's definitely a challenge at times, especially with players that maybe don't have the goal of playing at the next level and just take it as a social experience. And I don't want to say they're not committed, but they may miss something here or there that they don't see as important or as detrimental to a team as what I would as a coach.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is, yeah, you kind of touched on it. When you control the scholarships, it's a lot different from people that some might be playing basketball because they really want to play in a high school. Some might be using it as an application booster. There's tons of reasons people play high school sports, but by the time you're there in college, you're doing it for real. You're
Exactly.
Yeah. So, how'd you get your first coaching job, which I guess was assistant at UNLV, your first
Yeah,
coaching post?
it was, yes.
Yeah. How'd you actually get that from being, a player? I guess you're a guard, which is also, I guess, an easier way to get into it than if you're big. But how did you get a job at, UNLV and then WKU as
So
assistant?
I might get in trouble for sharing this story, but I mentioned I knew like when I had that medical redshirt year in college, my third year, and the game was taken away from me and I had to watch from the sidelines. That was when I truly, truly realized this is my calling. This is what I want to do. And my fourth year of my eligibility when I was playing, um, I wanted to stay on and be a grad assistant because I wanted to get my master's degree and get my foot in the door with coaching. And so that was all lined up. Well, that year, obviously, we had our best year ever. We won our conference championship, went to the NCAA tournament, and people were reaching out to our head coach for other job offers. So she actually got the job at UNLV. And when she got it, had asked me if I wanted to come join as an assistant coach, which back then they still had what they called the restricted earnings coach, which is more like your third assistant today. And I actually turned her down because I was engaged to be married after I graduated that summer. I met my husband. He was actually a basketball player for the men's team at Austin Peay. And we were going to get married and I was going to stay and be the grad assistant. I had talked to the coach that was going to replace my coach. and she had agreed to let me stay on as the grad assistant. So that was kind of my plan. I wanted to get my master's. So it was in June after I graduated, and I went home, and we were going to get married in August of that year. And I could just tell something wasn't right. And so I'm talking on the phone to who now is my husband, and end up finding out like he kind of got cold feet and said he wasn't ready to get married. And so that kind of changed everything. My former coach kind of found out about that, gave me a call and said, hey, I still have this spot open. Do you want to fly out? You can work a camp. I'll show you around. So she flew me and my mom out to Vegas, and I worked a basketball camp. They showed me around, and she offered me the job again. And on the flight home, I looked at my mom. I'll never forget. And I'm like, Mom, I'm going to take the job. And she was like, are you? And she's like, you're only, 3.5, 4 hour flight away. And so I'm like, yeah, I need to do this for myself. And so Billy, my husband, when I got back in town, had heard that I was out there and ends up calling and asked me, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm going to go to Vegas. And he's like, well, what if, I wanted to work things out? And I'm like, that's great, but I'm going to Vegas. I've made this decision for me. If you want to work this out, then you'll come to Vegas. We'll figure it out. So however many years later, here we are. And, he throws in my face now that had he not done that, who knows if we would be together today. But that's kind of how it happened. My former coach, that's kind of a very long story to your question. But she was the one that gave me the opportunity to get into college coaching, and it kind of went from there.
Yeah, how'd you get over to WKU?
So I had grown up back in middle school. A lot of us on the Scottsburg team would go down to Western Kentucky for their basketball camps. They had huge basketball camps. And, back then, in the 80s, they were 3 Final Fours, and, they were just very, very successful. It was them and Louisiana Tech battling out. And so I knew I was very familiar with Western Kentucky. And I was out on the road recruiting one summer. It was after my second year, between my second and third year at UNLV, and I ran into the head coach. And at the time that I was at the camps back when I was in middle school, he was the associate head coach, but he had now become the head coach. And I went up to him and I said, hey, you may not remember me, but I used to come to your camps all the time. And one of my former teammates, Renee Westmoreland, who was Indiana Miss Basketball, that's where she went. She was on their national runners-up team. So of course I had a name drop and say, I played with Renee. And I just told him, I said, hey, if you ever have an opening, I'd love to talk to you about it and, get back closer to home and that area. And so we just kept in touch. And, at the end of that year, he ended up calling me and saying, hey, I think I'm going to have an opening. Would you be interested? So he flew me back and I interviewed. And so that's how that came about. Just randomly approaching him in a gym.
So, you've coached and lived in Scottsburg, Clarksville, which isn't small, but and then Bowling Green, the Kentucky version. What's it like when was Vegas, and it's Vegas, so the answer's gonna
Yeah.
be yes. But what's Vegas like when you've lived prior to that in Scottsburg and Clarksville, and then what's it like when you go to Vegas as like a 24-year-old, 23-year-old?
Yeah. 23. Yeah. It was very much culture shock. Just as you said, like it was such a big city, and it's just different out on the West Coast.
You're in a desert.
Yeah, in the desert, everything's brown. And basketball's not a big thing. Like you have some, obviously you have talent and you have schools that get support, but I'd go recruiting, I'd be sitting in these gyms and I'm like, oh my goodness, because I was used to playing in front of sold out gyms in high school. But it was definitely culture shock, and even being there, when you're recruiting, it's different for boys, but when you're sitting down with a family and talking to parents of a, 16, 17-year-old that you're trying to recruit to come to Las Vegas and take their daughter, how do you sell that? to parents of a teenage daughter. It just, there was always something going on. There's so much more that you had to be concerned about as a coach because everything out there and the different distractions, but it was fun. Like, I enjoyed it. You can definitely separate yourself from the strip and the lifestyle of all of that, which we did. We had more friends, and we realized when we lived out there that we want to come visit. But yeah, it was fun, but it was so different from what I had grown up to and what I was accustomed to.
So, do most of your players come from in Vegas, or do most of them kind of come from outside of Vegas at UNLV?
Definitely, I think in Vegas the basketball has gotten a lot better than what it was back then. There were some players in the Vegas area, but a lot of Southern California, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, you're pulling from a lot of the neighboring states, just because Nevada is so much desert anyway.
Yeah, there's two cities in Nevada.
Yes, exactly.
Well, well, I was gonna ask because a lot of the UNLV men's national championship team, a lot of them are from nowhere near Nevada. So,
Right.
like
Yeah.
Larry Johnson's from Dallas. So,
Yeah.
so or pretty much. So kind of winding down here right now. What's your outlook on this season? What's you're 2-1. You have a game tonight when we're recording this. What's
Mhm.
it like? What do you think your outlook is? What's your goal? I'm sure it's hard when you're a college coach to set goals a little bit, high school kid, grade on a curve type thing. But, how do what is your goal this season?
Well, I mentioned earlier that we don't have a lot of depth. And I think a big key for this year is going to be staying healthy, and being able to just, make it through this season. But I feel like, even with a lack of depth, the players that we have that we're counting on are really solid players that are able to make a lot happen. I think that we're a team. I would hope that fans that come out to watch us would say that we're a team that's fun to watch. They're going to get up and down the floor. They're going to play hard, and they're going to play on both ends of the floor. So I feel like, our girls, I've seen the maturation and the steps, each of the years that I've been here, and getting them to, again, start to buy in, which is such a huge thing. When you're building up a program and trying to get it to contend, for championships. But I think we have a very strong team, and, I'm hoping that, at some point this year that we're cutting down some nets, and they're getting to experience that.
That's really all I have prepared question wise. Is there anything you want to get out there, coach?
No, I just appreciate the time and you having me on here, and, kind of reliving some of those memories from years ago.
Well, this has been Hunter Way at the Athletes Lounge podcast, and thanks for doing this, coach.
Thank you.
Hey guys, this is Hunter Way at the Athletes Lounge podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe where you can. Thanks.